Blog Talk Radio.
Namaste, people of planet Earth and all throughout infinite consciousness. Welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. It is October 15th, 2014, the day of a quarter moon for all of you astrology experts. I am your host, Andrew Fisher, broadcasting every Wednesday from the suburbs of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. And today we are scheduled to have Fritz Springmeier, who is an Illuminati and New World Order researcher who is well known for his masterpiece books, Be Wise as Serpents and Bloodlines of the Illuminati, the latter of which I did read and have right by my side here to help me use as a guide throughout the show. Fritz is not a conspiracy theorist. He takes facts very seriously when it comes to exposing the malevolent intentions of the Illuminati bloodlines, and that is why in the title I wrote Illuminati Facts Exposed. I did, by the way, get a chance to speak to him at the Philadelphia Free Your Mind conference in April 2013. I don't know if he remembers me. Well, actually, he doesn't. Well, maybe he does. I spoke to him about it when I emailed him back in the day about coming on my show. But before I get him on, we'll have him on at 10 after the hour at the absolute latest. But I'm going to start with the news courtesy of Alex Jones and Company at InfoWars. A lot of Ebola articles, so what else is new? Well, I'm going to give Fritz a chance to talk about that. He wanted to talk about super plagues, as he just told me on Skype, so we'll talk about that among many other things. But the first article here, CDC pushes preparedness for zombies over Ebola. To quote CDC Director Tom Frieden, if you're prepared for a zombie, you're really prepared for an infectious disease. Yes, wasn't there a story not that long ago that InfoWars did about the government preparing for some sort of a zombie attack and doing drills for that? Make that whatever you will, but I don't really know if Ebola can turn people into zombies. Maybe Fritz could elaborate on that perhaps, but it's pretty inauspicious when you have the word zombies and Ebola and also CDC in the same article. Our next article here, Rand Paul says Obama is downplaying the Ebola threat. The senator says authorities are not being honest about transmissibility of virus. And by the way, Alfred Weber, in a recent interview with Peter Kling, did assert that he has seen the evidence to say that Ebola was created in a government lab as a biological weapon, and this form of Ebola is different than other past forms. So I guess there was a little extra tampering going on in this regard. But, of course, Obama's going to downplay the threat. He's a puppet, and this was created by the Illuminati bloodlines to make us sick and put us in fear, and they're taking asinine measures to try to contain the disease. Oh, my God, it makes you want to cry. Ebola makes you cry blood. It's a unpleasant illness, I hear. Next Ebola article. Ebola riots hit Sierra Leone as authorities overwhelmed. The police resort to tear gas after body of Ebola victim left in street for 2 days. Well, it's nice to see the people of Africa are really taking matters into their own hands here. It's all part of a plot to steal Africa's resources as well, not just to make us sick in America, but use the Ebola, spread it throughout Africa, make many of the African people sick, and then after they kill innocent black people, and by the way, doesn't it make you humble to see those Africans in their tribes not having the luxuries we do, no electricity, and having to hunt and gather and do all sorts of craft work and all and building? Doesn't it make you feel really humble to see that they have to go through that in their part of the world, and now people are trying to kill them to exploit Africa for its resources? And by the way, Webster Tarpley did say that America and Africa are, for all practical purposes, in a war with each other over resources in Africa. Doesn't Obama's cousin have a political position in Kenya? I believe he still does. All right, next article. Dow tumbles amidst Ebola outbreak scare. The Ebola figures into stock worries. Yeah, I don't know exactly how much it fell, but the stock market is rigged. Person A and Person B are trading with each other. One person trades a horse for $2,000 to Person B, and Person B trades it back to Person A for $2,020. So how much is the horse worth? Well, it's worth $2,010, people would say, because that's the average of 2000 and 2020. No, dumbasses, the horse is only worth $20. See how the scam works? The people are in on the plot to sell the horse, and the horse, one person sells for $2,000 to make it seem, it must be at least worth that, and then the person who's in on the conspiracy sells it back for $2,020. See why the horse would only be worth $20? well, many people don't realize this, and even though the Dow tumbles amidst the Ebola scare, you know that they're sick and evil enough to manipulate the market even more. And by the way, Wall Street insider Matt Taibbi in the not-too-distant past, love him, hate him, he always he was really big on exposing Wall Street corruption, but then again, he didn't really want to talk about 9/11 and even said the 9/11 truthers are crazy. Well, it wasn't that long ago when he I don't think he retracted 9/11, but he did say people should have taken these conspiracy theorists a little more seriously. There is rigging everywhere, and it'll be interesting to see what he has to say about the Ebola outbreak causing the Dow tumble. All right, next article. Houston demands to see pastors' sermons. A chilling attempt to silence free speech. City demands religious leaders reveal communications on transgender bill. I'm sure this must be really near and dear to Fritz Springmeier's heart because he is a devout Christian, and even though I am not, I do have the utmost respect for freedom of religion, and I realize that being able to choose your religion is key to a free society. And we're supposed to have separation of church and state, and this is obviously not separation of church and state. Pastors, refuse to show your sermons, will you? Our next article, Obama cancels trips, calls for emergency meeting on Ebola. The Obama administration is apparently now taking Ebola seriously. Oh, so maybe Rand Paul, maybe you owe Obama an apology for saying Obama's downplaying the Ebola threat. No, he doesn't owe Obama an apology. Obama should have called for this emergency meeting a lot sooner than he did now, and well, maybe the public pressure is getting to him, and that's a good thing if that's the case. So, all right, next article. Passengers on flight with Ebola patient might be infected. The CDC attempting to contact all passengers on Frontier Airlines flight. All right, well, this is a relatively highly airborne and highly contagious word I'm looking for, form of Ebola. All the more evidence that it was truly tampered with in labs. And, well, I'm no fan of the TSA because I know it's not for safety. It's to humiliate and control us and make us feel like slaves. But if you're going to try to contain an Ebola threat, it may not be such a bad idea for people that maybe act like TSA agents to make sure that people who have the disease are not going out to the rest of the world and making us sick, but you know that the government that is opening the borders up and letting people in to screw over the American people and their economy on the Mexican border, if they're going to do that, they're probably not going to ask the TSA or, for that matter, anybody in government to take this Ebola threat seriously and try to contain it. Well, hopefully our guardian angels and spirit guides will contain the Ebola threat and help us fight through this. Our one last article before I get Springmeier on. Alexa caught targeting conservative websites. Is Amazon-owned company purposely sabotaging sites which carry headlines contradictory to administration talking points? Well, if you're going to talk against the administration like Jay Leno did by saying Benghazi's new slogan, don't ask, don't tell, and Jay Leno, he always wrote his own jokes, and then he loses his job unexpectedly because well, nobody knows why, but it was probably because he was exposing Obama's corruption and the Benghazi cover-up, and so now this is a similar thing where some Amazon-owned company is sabotaging sites that carry headlines contradictory to what the administration wants. We got to put a stop to this tyranny, folks. We got to put a stop to this. All right, I see there are some people in the chat room. I will try to speak with you every so often, but without further ado, just going to make a drink of water here. All right, I'm going to let Fritz Springmeier on. I believe this is him, area code 503. Area code 503, Fritz Springmeier, is that you?
This is me, Andrew. Hello.
How you doing? Well, let's let bygones be bygones and forget about those other problems in the past. It's not worth talking about. So let's get right to it. I'm going to start off by letting you talk about what you wanted to talk about, being concerned about the super plagues and the economy crash. Start with that, but after you finish that, I already would like to start off with what I wanted you to talk about. You did spend some time in jail, and apparently it was because you were doing things that the power elites did not want you doing, so they put you in jail to silence you. I'm assuming that was the case. I know that happens. Just ask John Nicholson, who was on my show in the not-too-distant past, but that's my first question for you. So talk about the super plagues and the economy crash, and then after that, talking about your experience being in jail and why they did that to you.
Okay, we've got a number of things we can cover here. Fine. Well, let's see. Let's build on what you were talking about. You were talking about how this Ebola is airborne, Now, and as you said, I like to speak about facts, and to be honest, all that we know is what we're being fed, and so we're kind of groping around in the dark for actual substantial facts as we live in this matrix. So, but if this thing is airborne, which a number of people have reported over the years that it is airborne. So the fact that recently there was a source that claimed that the authorities, the Center for Disease Control, CDC, they got together with Homeland Security, and then one of the branches of Homeland Security is the TSA. They've been having meetings where they've been concerned about it being airborne. So if it is actually, in fact, airborne, or if there is some way that they can pull off staging something that looks like it's been airborne, we could be looking at something serious in not only in the United States, but there's a lot of nations that are very vulnerable to something coming out of Africa via travelers. And once it started, a lot of your third world countries don't have anything in place to protect themselves. And this falls in line with the type of things that the Illuminati have been planning, these pandemics. I recently referred to a Rockefeller Foundation white paper, which it was describing scenarios in the future, and they described something that matches, what we're currently having with this Ebola outbreak. And this would be lovely for them because they have been working for a long time at population reduction. And one of the big population reductions that was created historically relates to the area of the world that I was living in. I graduated from high school from Council Grove, Kansas, and just to the north of that is Fort Riley, Kansas. And Fort Riley, a lot of people don't realize that this influenza outbreak that they later called the Spanish influenza, that killed 21 million people, it started at Fort Riley, Kansas in March 1918. That's right after World War II, when people were still recovering from the World War. I said World War II. I meant World War I, the war to end all wars. And then there were subsequent influenza outbreaks. And the interesting thing is those people that look at the genetic makeup of this influenza, it all went back to the original one that came out of Fort Riley. And the next waves of influenza came out of U.S. military bases too. And so the point I'm making is these things are being created, bio-war, and can we trust our government? Did they tell us the truth about the Gulf War syndrome? And then they made the soldiers take the anthrax vaccinations, and 51 of their personnel were court-martialed because they refused to take that. Are we looking at taking vaccinations for this Ebola in the future? And if we are, how safe are those? The company that made those anthrax vaccinations, the FDA inspectors, when they came through that company, there was only one company making it, Bioport, and they rejected 3 million doses of that vaccine. So, even if they're not lacing it with something, just the manufacturing processes might be defective. But yet, I'm concerned that, we may be forced, who knows what they're going to force upon us if this Ebola thing gets out of hand. that's one of the things is not only the Ebola, but they've got other super plagues lined up behind it. So we're we're looking at some pretty powerful things hitting us. These pandemics, they call them pandemics. That means an epidemic that spreads a long distance, all globally maybe. And so we really, as intelligent, responsible people, need to take a responsibility for boosting up our immune systems and preparing for the kind of things that may be thrown at us. Okay, that was discussing the Ebola. And there's some other
economy
things.
Crash. Oh yeah, the economy crash was
Okay, shall
finish that thought.
Okay, go into that before I go into my vacation that the feds gave me.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, one of the things that the Illuminati has been working on very diligently, and like you said, I was following your newscast and enjoying it, how things are rigged as far as prices. If we go back and look at what happened in 2008 before the crash, you saw a temporary pattern there, very similar to what's going on right now. Stock market's in decline, currency's declining, gold and silver temporarily declining, oil and gas prices declining, foreign bond prices declining, all these things declining, and the dollar's temporarily going up, but what are we seeing, We're seeing manipulation by the Federal Reserve. We see investors actually just waiting to see what the Fed's going to do, because the Illuminati was earlier this year in the Bilderberg meeting, and other financial meetings, they have mentioned that the Fed needs to start raising interest rates, and so, of course, the Fed's walking a tightrope. They don't want deflation, and they like inflation, but they're now worried that the Fed's worried that their governors about the dollar getting too strong. But so anyway, at some point in the next few months, we're going to see interest rates go up slightly because of the Fed. But anyway, all of this is kind of smoke and mirrors, because people are getting so hung up on like what you were saying, the nitty-gritty of it all, not realizing that all of this is manipulated. And the bottom line is the U.S. dollar is an accident waiting to happen. China's economy is also smoke and mirrors, an accident waiting to happen. The thing that I want to pull out and talk to people about is the heart of the Illuminati is European, right? And the euro is actually, a lot of people don't realize this, the euro is back. It's getting stronger, and Europe collectively has more gold than China or the United States. Europe is going to come out of this whole economic crash on top. This is all like a big chess game. In fact, that's what the hierarchy, the Illuminati kingpins have told me. We're just playing a big chess game. Well, that's fine from their vantage point, but who are the pieces in this chess game? The pieces in this chess game are real live people. When they take a rook or a castle or a pawn, those are real live people that they're killing. It may be a game to them, but this is, people a lot of times they ask me, well, are these things for real? Well, they're real for us. They may be a game for the string pullers of the world, but for us, when we're living and dying, and these are life or death things, like the stock market, collapsing, which, I've been predicting. And I know people go, oh, well, people have been predicting the crash of the U.S. economy for our whole lifetime, and that's true. When I got into this in the 70s, when I started exposing the world system back in the 70s, people were saying, the banks are going to crash, the economy's going to crash. Well, there would be downturns. There would be things like 2008. There been other economic downturns. But a total collapse where the house of cards just totally collapsed, it never happened. And this is because the United States is the world's reserve currency. The petrodollar, people buy and sell their gas and oil using dollars. Well, that's changing. We've been halfway dethroned from the world's reserve currency. Russia has predicted that by the year 2017, the U.S. dollar will no longer be the world's reserve currency. That's just a couple years from now. So, that prediction may well, I would not be surprised if that prediction by Putin, it doesn't come true. We're on a precipice. We're very close to losing that status. And when we lose the status as the world's reserve currency, then we will no longer be able to inflate our currency and without paying the price that other countries pay. So, that's the thing that we're dealing with. We're dealing, like you say, with a lot of myths. Like I said, the myth that China has a strong economy, the myth that the United States is not vulnerable to an attack by China. China they've studied in detail how to do a financial attack against us, and they want to. They want to take us down. Russia and China want to take us down as the world reserve currency, and it'd be so easy. Just a few days after the Boston, when they had that false flag marathon bombing, there were a bunch of Islamic hackers that hacked into an Associated Press Twitter account, and then they made this false news story that Obama had been injured in a terrorist attack, and that went out on the Associated Press wires, and the Dow Jones index immediately started dropping within a short, hours. $136 billion had been wiped out in the stock market. That's how vulnerable we are. We're that vulnerable. Anything could set things tumbling, but I have been saying that we are especially vulnerable these next few months before this year ends, and I will be really surprised if we make it out of this year without a financial economic crash. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on the dangers that we have in our economy. It's shifting gears here. Yes, I got the I want to say privilege. It's not really, most people would not consider it a privilege to go on an 8-year vacation in federal prison. I was set up. When federal cases happen, if they set a new precedent, they write them up, right? And those are published in big law books so that lawyers can go back and see what cases set new precedences. Well, my case set a new precedence. And what was that? In my case, there was no evidence. And so I set a new low standard for how you can convict someone without any evidence. They bribed 3 criminals. One they let out of prison. Another one they gave him immunity from any of the crimes that he had committed. Another one they forgave about 140 years of prison time for him to testify. So these guys were well bribed, and they came in, and you would have thought that they would say something. They actually didn't say anything. If you sat there in court, you'd have gone, they didn't even say anything. But the jury obviously must have thought that if the federal government was going to all this much trouble I must be guilty of something. And the first time they went out, they actually found me not guilty, but the judge told them that they had to find me guilty, and so guess what? They ended up finding me guilty. So it's a very interesting thing. They managed to put me into prison. That should be no surprise to anyone who knows the way our legal system here in the United States works. They could indict a ham sandwich. In fact, just to see if they could, one time they actually did indict a piece of fruit. They were trying to see if the grand jury would go for it, and the grand jury did. They actually, this is true, in real life, they actually indicted a piece of fruit. And that's the level of justice that we have in this nation. And but what the enemy meant for, as a Christian, I can honestly say what the enemy meant for evil, God turned to good. And I was blessed during my time in prison, and I came out and resumed what I was doing. During my time in prison, interestingly, while I was tucked away in a cell and not doing much of anything, my information, because the internet, my information spread worldwide. Andrew, did you get to know me while I was in prison? Is that when you came across my information during the early 2000s?
No. I learned about you from Alex Jones when I saw that interview that you did with him. Not your recent one with Leanne McAdoo, but one like maybe a year and a half, couple of years ago. After that, one of the first things I did was read your book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati. But yeah, we did speak at Philadelphia Free Your Mind. I was dressed in all black that down, if you remember me. But that was me asking a couple questions. I'll probably ask you them again just for the hell of it on this show. But no, I'm not the Fisher who you think of that may have known you in prison.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we did meet in, and there were many people at the Philadelphia conference, so it was a little hard for me to stay on top of everybody that I met, but yes, we did meet, and I appreciate you introducing yourself, and I will, Lord willing, be at the next Free Your Mind conference that's upcoming this next year. They have invited me back anyway.
Yeah, I should be there too. By the way, I do have a caller in the queue, area code 901. Stick around by all means. I'm not going to be taking any calls until about 45 minutes from now. Got some things to discuss. But you folks, you are welcome to call into the show. Ask Fritz questions. If I get a lot of callers, I got to limit it to maybe 4 minutes per caller. But please call in if you want to. The number is 646-478-4747. And, well, now we're going to start talking about some really important Illuminati stuff. You did mention in your Bloodlines of the Illuminati book, and I did ask you about this at the conference, about how your chapter on the Rockefeller family in the Bloodlines book, it should have been a lot longer, but some of the information was lost. I don't really want to get into the details of how it got lost. I mean, if it got lost because someone in the power elite structure got rid of it, then by all means let us know that. But the important thing is there were some key things about the Rockefeller family that you probably would have discussed had that information not been gotten rid of. So some of that stuff that's missing from your book, I'm going to give you the chance to expose it now. What do you have to say about the Rockefellers?
Well, I don't know what specifically you have in mind, but basically these bloodlines are nasty people, and a lot of them are psychopaths at the top, and we can make the joke, the family that prays together, but we're not talking about Prays. We're talking about Preys, praise as in prey on people. One thing that I would say is the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds are two separate bloodlines. People like to get the two, describe the two as one. The Rockefellers have played a major role in controlling our government. They played a major role in controlling religion in the United States. The Union Theological Seminary has been supported by them, and they're working to take Christianity into this global religion, the ecumenical movement, the World Council of Churches. They have been, their bloodline has been involved with, supporting the Council of Foreign Relations, the Brookings Institute, and what they did was they set up the Rockefeller Foundation, and that foundation's played a major role in putting money into supporting things that's part of their agenda, like eugenics, and they supported Nazi eugenic programs before World War II broke out, and the Rockefeller Foundation supported Alfred Kinsey. I don't know, maybe some of our listeners know who he was, but he's known widely as an anthropologist who studied human sexuality, but in reality, he was a pervert, a pedophile, and he was into all kinds of weird, kinky sex. And he used his weird, kinky sex that he himself did, like being a predator with children, and then keeping track of what kind of things happened when he did pedophilia. And so, anyway, Kinsey's research was supported financially by the Rockefeller Foundation. They did that two ways. They sent money through the National Research Council, but they also gave them money directly until they got exposed doing that. One of the highlights of this whole battle between us, the people, and the Illuminati was there was a committee called the Carol Reese Committee to investigate the un-American activities of the big foundation. It actually got started in 1952 under Cox, but somehow Cox died. I suspect he was murdered. But anyway, Carol Reese, who was a congressman, he stepped up and kept the investigation going. And so this was a congressional committee in 1954. Anyway, they discovered quite a number of things, and one of them is they discovered that the Rockefeller Foundation was supporting Kinsey in his kinky sexual research. Not only was Kinsey a pervert, but he used a lot of predators, and he would have these sexual abusers sexually abuse a child and keep notes of everything that happened while they were doing it, and then he would use that in his research papers. Anyway, once they exposed that, why the Rockefeller Foundation dropped Kinsey. They dropped financing him. Because but not only were they financing eugenics and destruction of our morals, but they were also financing the Fabian Socialist London School of Economics. And some of our audience probably knows about the Fabian Socialists. Some of them maybe don't. Their logo, wolves in sheep's clothing, says quite a lot right there. But therefore, Fabian Socialism is really, just Illuminati philosophy. The Illuminati program is to take us into a one world government with socialism. And the ideas that the Fabian socialists massaged are Illuminati ideas. That's what these people are all about, and I discussed that in my Bloodlines of the Illuminati book. In the Astor chapter, I discuss how the Astors were connected with Fabian socialism. Astors being one of the top 13 Illuminati bloodlines.
Right. And there is one specific bloodline that I really want to get some time to talk about, the Lee family, because a lot of people don't know a lot about it. It's funny, in your book you actually said, I can't really prove that there are connections with the Illuminati and the Lee family, but it would be a miracle if they weren't, because they're actually a lot more prominent than we're led to believe. And the name Lee, it may be the most popular last name in the world, but this is specifically talking about the Lee family that is almost certainly connected to the Illuminati and controls the affairs of East Asia to a great extent. So we got to talk about that for a little bit. Please discuss this important subject.
Okay, well, I got the names of the top families from these people that I was helping bring out of the Illuminati. And it's kind of interesting because, we just got through talking about the Rockefeller family, and I started out my chapter in the Bloodlines book with a picture of David Rockefeller, who's, a kingpin within the Illuminati. When he went to visit Red China, he visited Li Qiang, who, of the Li family. And my sources that were trying to escape the Illuminati, they were telling me about the Li Illuminati family. And, of course, within these bloodlines, not everybody's going to be an Illuminati member. But, it was very obvious that Li Ka-shing, who plays such a role with Red China as well as Vancouver, British Columbia. He and his sons are so prominent. It's very obvious he was an Illuminati kingpin, and he's a billionaire, and he was the de facto ruler of Hong Kong, and you just look around in East Asia, and you see, like, the president of Singapore was of the Li family. You look at the ruler of Red China, he was Li family. It's pretty obvious that this Li family was important. And so I went through history and showed how they played a role throughout history, how they played a role with the triads, and discussed how Li Ka-shing had this enormous empire that stretches clear over here. He has 50% of Star TV, which was this huge Asian. In other words, we've got the Illuminati controlling the media and television in Asia. Well, that's no surprise, and controlling the drugstores and supermarkets in East Asia. Well, no surprise there either. And he has a controlling interest in Husky Oil, which those of our listeners that are from Canada will recognize Husky Oil. When I was in prison, going back, connecting it to what we were talking about earlier, I was in prison. There was actually an inmate who had been the go-between in Hawaii between the Lee Illuminati family that had representatives in Hawaii and the mafia. One of the things that, and it's an amazing thing, these Illuminati bloodlines, they have more money than they need. They control the methods of how wealth is created, how money is created. They're the stockholders of the Federal Reserve, blah, blah, blah. And yet they can't keep their hands out of doing all of these criminal activities, So he was the go-between between the mafia in Hawaii and the Lee Illuminati family. And since he was already in prison, he didn't care. He he sat down and I took out a legal yellow notepad and I made lots of notes, people, dates, blah, 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 of what he had experienced, being the go-between between the Illuminati and the Mafia. And then it wasn't but a short time after that one of the guards came into my room, confiscated that, and threw it away. So I lost all those notes, but, I know what the bottom line was. The bottom line was the organized crime and the Lee Illuminati family were working together, which, I discussed some of that within the Bloodlines of the Illuminati book.
Yeah, and in your book, there is also a inauspicious family tree showing how, I believe it's 23 presidents are related. I'm looking at it right. Yeah, it's actually 25 American presidents are related, although some other people, among them David Icke, have said that it's possible to show that all the presidents are related. You would just need a much bigger book to create a much bigger family tree to show that. I don't know if you can confirm or deny that is true, but and the 13th Merovingian bloodline, which also contains the British royal family bloodline, is the one that the presidents are related to. So I think we better talk about this. And yeah, just for the hell of it, can you maybe perhaps say all presidents are related?
I know that he said that. I haven't actually seen the actual the genealogy research that I had done showed what you see there, which I thought was pretty outstanding in itself. And then he's taken it. Well, actually, to interrupt my train of thought, there's actually a few more genealogy charts in the Bloodlines book, and one of them shows how 17 presidents go back to Edward I Longshanks. In the movie Braveheart, the evil English king, a lot of our presidents are related to them. And then there's another genealogy chart showing how they're related to Merovingians. So yeah, there was more genealogy charts than the one you're referring to. So yeah, I did trace a wider thing than just 25. So yeah, from that standpoint, it's the possibility is there. I just haven't specifically seen the connections charted out. But it's a distinct possibility, and that Merovingian dynasty is very important. That William Van Dyne, who's head of Illuminati right now, not only did his ancestors marry into Weishaupt's lineage, but they also, I have the genealogy of showing them tying back into the Merovingian. So this Merovingian bloodline is very important. And of course, given a length of time, a bloodline that big is going to bifurcate and be so widespread that it can become really hard to track. And then one of the things that they do is just like with our president right now, they do a lot of covering up of just who are these people. They don't necessarily give us the true facts of who their parents are and what their lineages are, and so there's definitely room there for what David Icke says. I just can't confirm it as a fact.
All right, that's understandable. Maybe in due time the research and the proof will come to you. But the important thing is it shows that our presidents are not elected. They are selected by bloodline, and yeah, that implies voter fraud is going on. Just ask Ron Paul. But some other things I want to discuss. Actually, one quick point. I'm really interested in this. I don't remember the section of the book I read this in, and I can't even find anything in the index to find it. But I do remember you saying something about how either the editor or the publisher of Eric von Daniken's books has connections to the Illuminati bloodlines. Now, I'm not suggesting von Daniken is in on any conspiracy. I'm thinking maybe they just put someone to work for him in a position of power to make sure that he doesn't talk about extraterrestrial stuff that the powers that be don't want revealed. I know extraterrestrials is not something you like getting into, but this is still significant, I believe, because von Daniken, a household name in the world of ET research. Can you maybe remember which bloodline family has a publisher or editor of his books?
Wow. There's oftentimes things that I just don't keep track of, and that was so many years ago. Without going back and looking at things, and I've completely forgotten about that whole subject, so I'm not able to really contribute anything on that. That whole subject of flying saucers and UFOs, the elite have been manipulating all angles to it, controlling all sides of it, throwing in disinformation, muddying the waters every which way. Definitely an important subject. I think a subject that we're going to see more come out on in the future. But to your specific question, I can't answer.
It's okay. I don't expect you to remember everything that you wrote in your masterpiece, 800-plus page books. But thanks for trying to answer. Here's a controversial subject. The Founding Fathers' connections to the Illuminati. You talked about how in your book that Benjamin Franklin, who was, by the way, an agent of the British king, and also Thomas Jefferson were both Satanists, as evidenced by they were members of the Hellfire Club. And a lot of people would say, well, if the Founding Fathers were really bad, like slave owners and Satanists and all that, like David Icke, I love the guy, but sometimes he demonizes the Founding Fathers. It does bother me a little bit that he does that. But one reason the powers that be don't expose the dirty secrets of the Founding Fathers is because it would be egg in their face if they did, because in the process of doing that, they would expose the secrets of the Illuminati, because the Founding Fathers were Freemasons. But I have no doubt the Founding Fathers had good intentions, yet I can see they had some flaws in the sense that, Franklin and Jefferson were Satanists. So why don't you expose some of the dirty secrets of the Founding Fathers? And again, don't feel bad. The important thing is we get to expose Illuminati secrets by doing this. That's what's important.
Wow, this is a subject that can draw some heat to me, because I know that Americans are very proud of the founding of this country. A lot of times you have different groups that are involved in a project that have different underlying reasons for why they do things. There's a lot of myths about the American Revolution, and when I was a young man, my goal was to look out there in history and see who is someone I could emulate, and then study their lives in detail, and then emulate them, because, I wanted to be the best person I could. And so there were a number of people whose lives I studied: Jesus Christ, Benjamin Franklin, Abraham Lincoln, Mahatma Gandhi. Benjamin Franklin ended up actually surprising me, and in a way kind of disappointing me, because Benjamin Franklin, he was the Postmaster General for North America. Now, the British put their top spy, the head of their spy organization, was the Postmaster General. So you know that Benjamin Franklin was more than just an American patriot. He was a very key player in the power structure. Not only that, but I discovered that he was the highest-ranking Freemason and Rosicrucian in North America. So when all of these people that put together the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, who were Freemasons, reason why they looked up to him was he was the head of Freemasonry, and he never missed meetings. I had a book by Soxy, which was about the Masonic career. It's a Masonic book where he goes in and discusses Benjamin Franklin's Masonic career, and there were Masonic meetings going on continually, essentially every day of the week. And Benjamin Franklin was never missing any of them. He was a very key player in what Freemasonry was doing in the United States. And then when we start looking at how the American Revolution was created and how the United States won the American Revolution, we see that Freemasonry played a key role in that. Now, the objections that a lot of people throw at me at this point is, well, Freemasonry was a Christian organization back then. And that's where, if you look at my Be Wise as Serpents book in the second chapter, I go in and show how Freemasonry, even back then, was occultic. You know, you look at the logos of the United Grand Lodge there in London, and they got demons on their logo, you know, or devils, whatever you want to call it. There was a whole hidden side. Now, if Freemasonry was on the up and up, like what they portray themselves, you know, an organization making good men better, then I would ask this question, because Benjamin Franklin wrote his autobiography as a book to publicize the good side of him. And it was one of the first things I read about Benjamin Franklin, his autobiography. And here's a man who's every day involved in Masonic meetings. He's the leader of Freemasonry, and yet in his autobiography, he never even hints of being a Freemason. If it's such an honorable organization, why was he totally secret about any affiliation to it? You see what I mean? There's a whole nother level to understand Freemasonry. There were a lot of Christian ministers that were involved in the American Revolution. There were a lot of people that fought in the American Revolution because they believed in the ideals, you know, of freedom. So, you know, there were different reasons as to why people fought. There were reasons why people didn't fight. But when I actually discuss the reality of the conflict, Americans really aren't prepared to look at it, you know, to step outside the matrix of American revolutionary mythology and look at the realities. One of the realities is that the majority of Americans were not revolutionists. There were a large share of Americans that didn't want to take part in the on either side. You know, you had you look at a state like Pennsylvania, which was settled by Quakers, Mennonites, Amish. None of those groups believed in war. You know, and the nation's the capital back then was Philadelphia, but you have the colony of Pennsylvania was by and large people that were conscientious objectors to war, but there were a lot of other Americans too that really didn't want to get involved. They didn't know really which side made the most sense. But then you had a lot of Americans that were loyal to their government. Americans failed to realize that back then we were a British colony. The legitimate government of the colonies was the British Crown, the King. And like even today, you have a lot of Americans that are loyal to Obama. You know, I see all these Obama stickers. You would think after all these years of Obama being president, Americans would quit supporting him. But there's still Americans that are supportive of Obama no matter what he's done. You know, so back then, about a third of the colonists were loyal to their legitimate government. That's that's very typical of the way a lot of people are, They believe in respecting authority. During World War II. Yeah,
it's one of the reasons we're in this prison planet matrix, because people will be sheep-like. I understand sheeple is a derogatory term, but hey, it's a commonly used term and it gets the point across. So sometimes you just gotta wake people up out of their trance and make them stop being apathetic. But carry on with your thought. I just wanted to say that for the sake of waking up humanity.
Yeah, exactly. The majority of Americans in the largest city of the colonies, which is New York City, were pro-king. They were Tories, what was called Tories. But another way of saying Tory would just be people that respected the legitimate government. And when the British Army moved into South Carolina, a large share of their troops were actually raised from the Loyalists in the Carolinas. So it was a very vicious civil war down in North Carolina and South Carolina between those that were, Loyalists and those that were rebels. So if we go back and we look at what really happened and you have to get beyond the myths, there's the myths like, George Washington chopped down a cherry tree, or he couldn't tell a lie, the Betsy Ross flag. I started trying to get beyond, because I'm a historian, I was getting beyond all of the myths that people so casually buy into. And if you start looking at what's called the Boston Tea Party, if you had gone and let's say you could take a time machine and you would drop back in time and was visiting George Washington's army, like at Valley Forge or any other time that they were campaigning, and you were to mention, the Boston Tea Party, you would have gotten stares. Nobody would have known what in the heck you were talking about. The Boston Tea Party was not a big patriotic act that caused the colonists to rise up against the king. It was actually a criminal act done by Freemasons, and what actually had happened is the British Crown had lowered the cost of legitimate tea, and the Masonic lodges had been doing criminal activity by smuggling in tea, which was breaking the Crown's monopoly, and the tea that they smuggled in, they sold cheaper than what was brought in legitimately. So when the British Crown reduced taxes on legitimate tea, it made the price of legal tea more competitive to theirs. And so in order to maintain their smuggling operation, they hired some lowlifes, and with these lowlifes that they hired, as well as members of the Green Dragon Lodge, they went down and they threw over into the port. They threw over what would be millions of dollars worth of legitimate cargo. It was a criminal act. It wasn't a patriotic act. And not only did this happen in Boston, but there were ports all down the Atlantic seaboard where they also did the similar thing. They planned these in Masonic lodges. But common Americans living back then did not identify that as a patriotic act. And so this whole Tea Party name is it amuses me because they don't even know what they named themselves after. But you can look at the lodge meeting records, and they adjourned the Green Dragon Lodge. It's even written in the minutes. They adjourned it so that they could plan and carry out this criminal activity. And then what surprises me is the tea that was thrown overboard was from the British East India Company, right? Which, is one of these Illuminati bloodlines. These elite bloodlines were behind the British East India Company, which connects in with all of the New World Order stuff and blah blah blah. But what's interesting was, and I was in a state of shock when I discovered this. The American flag that we adopted in the American Revolution, the one with the 13 stars and the 13 red and white stripes, that was the British East India Company flag. And they had different variations of it. One variation was just the 13 red and white stripes without the blue corner. But one of the flags that they had for a while exactly matched what they call it. And what I ask is why would the leaders of the American Revolution adopt the flag of the British East India Company? Bizarre. Anyway, it shows that there's a hidden level to all of this. And I know that there are people that really wanted freedom and liberty, and so there's that aspect to it too. But there's a lot of hidden secrecy to the whole thing.
Oh, yeah, that is the case. But yeah, I've no doubt the Founding Fathers did care about making everybody free, and a lot of people need to understand that Freemasonry took a turn for the worse when the Bavarian Illuminati, emphasis on Bavarian to symbolize the fact that this is a small faction of the Illuminati, infiltrated the Masons, and George Washington did express grave concern for that, and that's maybe when things took a turn for the worse. And you have to understand also there's so much compartmentalization going on in the Illuminati that even 33rd degree Freemasons like Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson would have no idea about the really sinister stuff that's going on above them. So I've no doubt they cared about freedom, and I think they were just pawns in many ways in a plot to turn America from a prison with bars into a prison without bars. But I want to move on to another subject. By the way, I noticed area code 901, took herself off the calling board there. I didn't say I was going to take calls at 45 after the hour. I said I was going to take them in 45 minutes, which would be in about 13 minutes from now. If you're by any chance listening, you're welcome to call back in. I will take your call. You'll be the first one up. But do want to talk about some things here. You did talk about in your Free Your Mind presentation something I believe about clones and how many of the political and corporate leaders that we see are actually clones. In fact, I do remember a ET contactee named Sunfire say that Henry Kissinger, as a matter of fact, was cloned. I don't know if you know anything about that, but this is an interesting subject to know that a lot of our leaders are actually clones, and maybe they've been hijacked clones in some sense. So tell us about what you know about clones in the Illuminati.
Well, anybody that's important is going to have doubles of some kind, and there's even documentation on this, and they can create doubles in a variety of ways. Sometimes they take someone who looks a similar look-alike and through plastic surgery change them. But the ability to clone a person is not hard to do. In my Deeper Insights book. Yeah, the Deeper Insights book. I go step by step. I have an appendix where I go step by step and show you the steps that one would take to clone a person. They have publicly even said that people have been cloned, but going back to Dolly and the sheep and rats and cattle and blah blah. They have been announcing cloning mammals for a long time. The point is whether it's a sheep or a cow that you're cloning, or whether it's a person. They're very similar processes, and there's nothing to prevent them if they want to clone people. And so we have to take into consideration the Illuminati have this huge script. And for a script to, it's like a play. If you're going to have a play, everybody has backups, right? I mean, the lead actor, what if the lead actor gets sick on opening night? Somebody's going to stand in for him, right? Well, not only that, but there's the need for some of these people, like Obama, he needs to be in 2 different places at one time. Or maybe he wants to be at a satanic ritual, but he needs to be somewhere else, so his clone can be there. So it's a no-brainer to know that they have to have doubles of these people. Otherwise, the program's just not going to, the script is too vulnerable. And then think it through. Why not create clones? That's the best. That's a carbon copy genetically. So they have the means to do it, and they have the desire to do it. So it should be a no-brainer that they're doing it. Anyway, that's enough said.
Okay. Thanks for giving your take on that. One more subject before I guess I start taking calls. I see area code 901 is back in. Don't hang up. You'll be the first one up. In your recent InfoWars interview with Leanne McAdoo, you mentioned the whole thing about Robin Williams. Now, a lot of people say whether or not Robin Williams was killed as part of a conspiracy is not important, so let's not go there. Even Akashic Records leader Andrew Bartis, who can answer almost any question under the sun, said, I don't want to talk about whether or not Robin Williams' death was a conspiracy. But you know what? We're going to talk about it anyway, because that's among many things we talk on this show. You did say that something about how people in Hollywood, they can be put under mind control, and it's possible that if they see that a celebrity is no longer of any usefulness to the Illuminati, they will put them under some mind control form that will cause them to kill themselves. And not that that happened to Robin Williams, but there is some evidence to point to that. And then after you talk about this specific thing, after we take the call, just so you know, I'd like to talk about mind control for a little bit. So touch on this Robin Williams thing.
Okay, well, some of our listeners may be aware of trauma-based mind control. Some of them may not be. It's the ability to create multiple personality disorder and to mind control with a very, very severe type of programming. They program the different alters, the different personalities of these people, and a large share of the Hollywood actors are under this type of mind control. One of the places where they groom such type of mind control victims was the Musketeers. So you see a lot of former Musketeers as movie stars. So one of the in trying to bring people out of the Illuminati, I had to get involved with the trauma-based mind control, the total mind control of the Illuminati, and I ended up writing 3 books on it. I wrote the Illuminati formula used to create an undetectable total mind-controlled slave. I call that the formula book for short. And then its sequel, Deeper Insight. So people can go to mypintracks.com, which is my website, if they want more information on this. I mean, it's a very big subject, and obviously I can only just briefly touch on it here. But one of the things about this mind control, it's standard that they train or they program the suicide alters to slit their wrists. And so when I was hearing about Robin Williams' death, there were some really bizarre things that didn't add up, about being hung from the door in a way that didn't sound realistic. But they said that he had slit his wrists. And slitting his wrist would have been a standard programming suicide. And it's very easy to trigger suicide programming in these people. So I can't say, exactly what happened, but, there were different reports like Robin Williams had become a Christian. He was maybe going to expose some things. Who knows? I want to be honest and say I don't know what the final facts are in the thing, but it definitely, to me, looked like the possibility that we were looking at someone who was a programmed trauma-based mind control victim having tried to slit his wrist when his suicide programming got triggered. And it would not surprise me if they had decided that, for whatever reasons, he was a liability, and he was going his own way, or he was going to say something that they didn't want said, and he was, there are certain stages in these people's lives where the mind control starts breaking down, and they become more aware of the control that's being done to them. So anyway, those are my thoughts on it, and I just share those as we might be looking at something. And why would that be important? Well, the reason why it would be important is a lot of things are happening right in front of us. It's like we're in this matrix, and we're seeing a lot of things happen in front of us, but we're misinterpreting them because so many people are not thinking for themselves. They're just accepting the explanations of the matrix, But if we can start seeing these patterns, all of a sudden the whole world will open up, and you'll see that all of a sudden, your eyes will be open, and you'll start seeing, it's like the movie They Live, where you put on the glasses and you see what's going on, I'm just trying to help people break free of the matrix.
Well, so am I, and that's the reason I'm doing this show. And by the way, don't worry about your difficulties understanding the nature of reality. I can assure you that mine are still greater. To adapt it from Einstein's quote about don't worry about your difficulties in math, I can assure you that mine are still greater. But we'll talk a little bit more about mind control in a little bit. Just wanted to get a quick caller in here. Area code 901. You are on the air. Introduce yourself. What's your name? Where are you from?
Hey, Nicholas, Tennessee. Thank you very much for taking my call.
You're welcome.
Hey, Fritz. I was wondering if anybody in the Illuminati ever talked to you or gave you insight about how they use sports to control and distract true manhood. And I'll hear your answer off the air. Thank you.
Various people that were in the Illuminati have talked about there's a lot of trauma-based mind control victims within sports like hockey and baseball and football. On a professional level, National Football, NFL level, those guys take a lot of punishment, and it really helps if they're if they're someone who's mind controlled, because they can dissociate a lot of the punishment and they can stand up to it a lot better. So, they talk to me about how a lot of the people within these sports are under this trauma-based mind control. And then there's been some other people that have talked to me about how the Illuminati kingpins set up things where they can rig the gambling involved in it. It's just another one of their inside jokes that they can manipulate the games and the spreads and the bookie spreads and so forth, so that they come out making money on it. Again, you might ask yourself, why do they need more money? Well, it's just it's a nice sport for them to as the insiders to fleece the rest of us, people that think that they're going to win on betting on sports, and then these insiders who can manipulate the games because the big players are under mind control and can be tweaked a little bit to fumble the ball or make this stupid move, or the coach substitute in a play that was stupid. So they play games. They play games with the games. So there's that aspect of it. But then the other aspect of your question is this goes back to how the elite have controlled us all along, and it's the bread and circus. The Romans used the bread and circus, the gladiator fights. So football games are just a variant of gladiator sports where they can keep the people occupied while, busy. As long as they're fed and they're entertained, the elite can continue doing whatever they want to control the world. So
just want to throw one quick bit in. I would certainly like to forward you, caller, to my interview with the Fixes In author Brian Toohey. I did have him on my show, and we did not bring up the subject of athletes being mind controlled in the sense that Fritz brought it up. I guess I'll send Brian Toohey an email about that and see what he has to say. He always responds to his emails, but just wanted to point that out, a great source for getting info on sports rigging. But Fritz, please carry on with what you were saying.
Oh, yeah, there's other people that have noticed these things. I'm not the only one. I did, when I was in prison, start to write a book that I wanted to expose how the Illuminati control things, the corruption within the National Football League. But, that is, I sometimes do things that make me very unpopular. That would definitely be an easy way to make myself unpopular with Americans who love their national sports teams. They're entertaining. I enjoy watching the Super Bowl, but I also, watch it with a realization that this is created as entertainment, and I don't base my whole life on these games. Like so many Americans, their whole lives revolve around these games, where they really need to be pulling out and looking at reality. The reality of their family, the real life. Instead of basing their life on a game. And anyway, that's my comments there.
Anything else, caller? I can give you a couple more minutes.
Oh, thanks. Well, yeah, I just had another quick thought come up in my mind. Fritz, have you heard anything about the 3 world wars that supposedly Albert Pike predicted? Because you hear about stuff like the 3 world wars if you do a search engine and on it and stuff.
Yes, I've known about that for about 30 years. And a lot of the people that I've come in contact with early on, like in the 1990s, that were trying to get out of Illuminati, who were Illuminati, they discussed the Third World War, and it hasn't happened. And in 2009, at Gstaad, Switzerland, they had a change in leadership. The new generation took over. And a lot of the agenda stayed the same, but some of it changed. And I'm not really expecting a world war to break out in the near future. The possibility of a world war is possibly in the cards, but I'm not expecting it from my take on what's been happening in the hierarchy. The Illuminati hierarchy have a number of cards that they can play, but that doesn't mean that they will necessarily be played. And even though Albert Pike, wrote this, and Albert Pike was like the grand poobah of Freemasonry, and others have also made similar things, it doesn't necessarily mean that the Illuminati won't change their plans. And where it's been so widely exposed that this is one of their plans, maybe they've just decided, we'll do we'll do deeper deception, and we just won't do what they're expecting, you know. So the Illuminati do change their plans. It's not like it has to happen. Anyway, that's what I can share with tracking these people.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for calling in, caller.
Okay,
take care now. I'll stay to you. Later.
Okay, you too.
Well, Fritz, glad to have a caller. Don't get a lot of callers on this show. Doesn't really air at a great time for people to be calling in, like commute and eating dinner and all with the family. But I upload all my shows to YouTube, and I will do this one as well, so all the archive listeners will hear this important information. One thing I want to talk about, I did say mind control. Yeah, they do have the ability, and I did talk about this in my interview with Jay Parker. Traumatize someone at a young age. You can, stick honeycomb spots in their brain in which if some trigger word, keyword, or symbol or phrase is uttered, even a picture is shown to them, the trauma that they received as when they were less than 5 years old will cause them to act in a crazy way, like shoot up a school or something like that, or and many other things. So mind control, and also drugs that can be used to give into people to put them under mind control, like this substance that Alex Jones talked about, blow it in people's faces, and you can make them take money out of a teller machine if you gave them an ATM card and they just tell them to do that, they do it. So tell us about mind control. I'll give you 15 minutes on this. There are a couple of other questions I want to discuss, but you got 15 minutes to discuss this.
Okay. This has been going on for a long time, but they have, they brought it to a scientific level. And one of the things that I did in my formula book was I gave like 40 pages of codes. And so once you are familiar with some of the standard programming scripts, which is Alice in Wonderland is one of them, and The Wizard of Oz, you'll see, follow the yellow brick road. You'll hear that a lot of times. Follow the yellow brick road means follow the programming, and you'll see if you read my books and you learn the codes, you'll actually see on television. Now, I don't watch television, but when I have, I'm always surprised by, I see them just, using this stuff, right in front of people, and nobody even catches on to it. But they have the beta programming, that's what they call it, that's their term for it, is a sexual program, but they have an assassination programming, which is called delta programming, and you can see the end result of this mind control. There was a movie put out like 1958, Telephone, a Charles Bronson movie, and in that movie they have this housewife, and she answers the phone, and they just say this little ditty. I've actually been there with mind-controlled slaves when the phone calls came in and heard the programmers say those kind of little ditties. I've actually witnessed this kind of stuff. But anyway, a little nursery rhyme ditty is said to this woman in the movie Telephone, this Charles Bronson, and she goes into another alter, another personality, and she goes to a military base and blows it up. So, this is, and of course in the movie they're blaming this is what the Russians are doing, Well, hey, it's not just the Russians, the Americans have been doing it too, and the British. And so this is what we have going on. So, a lot of these people that are walking into schools, shooting them up, these people are under mind control. Think of the Nichols mine in Lancaster County. This guy, his whole life, he's been a decent person, and all of a sudden one day he flips out and acts differently than he's acted in his entire life. And he goes into an Amish school, wants to rape the kids, ends up killing them. What is this? This is mind control. And so I'm just telling people what's going on. And when I was working with these people under mind control, I was bumping into this end-time programming, the end-time activation codes, all of this stuff to get people to do all of this crazy stuff. It's all in there. They got the codes. I was trying to see if I could diffuse that type of programming. It's really hard to work with the programming because you go in and try to tamper with the programming, and there's backup programs that cause the person to commit suicide if you tamper with the programming. So it's not easy to do. It's like diffusing a bomb or something. But anyway, yeah, that's some comments there about mind control and all the crazy stuff we see going on.
Okay, any specific drugs that you can talk about that you can just give to someone and they will do what you tell them to do? Can you elaborate on that maybe?
Well, these people are being controlled through codes.
Oh.
It's not the drugs. I mean, drugs are used as part of the whole scenario of how they're programmed. They use drugs for programming, like LSD-25 is used for the suicide programming that we talked about earlier. No, they will look like they're under drugs because they'll be in a trance and they'll look druggy, but they're not really under drugs. They're under a hypnotic, deep hypnotic level. So they're in a trance, but they're not in drugs when they're going and doing this stuff.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that some of them might not be under drugs. I mean, there's a lot of different possibilities of the way the programmers could work things, but generally these people are just in a trance.
Okay, thanks for giving your take on that. By the way, there is a thunderstorm moving in my area. Hopefully the power won't go out. Well, let's just cross our fingers. I asked my guardian angels and spirit guides to make sure that doesn't happen. But you never know with this crazy weather we got, and HARP manipulating weather too. But don't want to talk about HARP, by the way. There is something I do want to discuss. Do have another caller in. I'll get you on after this one question I asked. This whole thing about the Illuminati bloodlines trying to take out people in the Middle East like Assad and Ahmadinejad and all the rest of them. It's an interesting fact that like most of the governments on planet Earth are actually corporations that masquerade as governments, and the few that aren't, well, they might as be corporations there, but because they're dictatorships. But it seems like they're the dictatorships that the Illuminati bloodlines don't want in power, and it kind of makes you wonder about the extent to which the Illuminati does control these dictators, like Assad and Gaddafi and the guy who Mubarak, who they kicked out of Egypt. It seems kind of counterintuitive that the Illuminati would want to kick someone that they're puppeting, and it also makes you wonder, well, if these guys really are Illuminati puppets, why are they disobeying their Illuminati masters, and how are they able to get away with it? So what can you tell us about the extent to which the Illuminati bloodlines control the people in these Middle East countries, these dictators that they're trying to kick out?
Well, control over world leaders comes from a number of different angles. And just take this into consideration, the IMF. And I'm not saying anything that you can't see. Even the world will back me up on this. The IMF can depose a world leader because of the financial controls that they have. They can screw a country over to where financially a leader is just ends up deposed. And the leadership of the IMF, Christina Lagarde, she's high up in the Illuminati, and her second in her right-hand person, Zhu Dr. Zhu is a globalist from China. So right there you have one tool that if the Illuminati wants to control things, they can. Now, you look at the intelligence agencies and look at Mossad, CIA, MI6. These type, like MI6, they're in every country. Mossad is in probably every country. The CIA is global too. So, and then you look at who's in charge of MI6. It's the Illuminati. Who's the string pullers in the CIA? Illuminati again. Alan Dulles. For instance, just very easy to see how he connects in. His brother John was married into the Rockefeller family. So you look at how these connections go back, and then, of course, insiders giving the information of how the Illuminati sends directives to these intelligence agencies. And then these intelligence agencies have a lot of ability to manipulate things. MI6 set up the Muslim Brotherhood in the 1920s. And you see the Mossad creating a lot of these bombers, these suicide bombers, which, talking about mind control, the Israeli intelligence is using this trauma-based mind control to create these suicide bombers, these Islamic suicide bombers. So this is all a script. And so you might say, well, why would someone like Gaddafi, who is against them, and definitely Gaddafi was marching to his own drummer. He definitely had some things that were not in sync with the globalists. But you take when they let someone like this come into power, it's because they're working off of a script, and you have to have your bad guy. You have to have the person that everybody hates. You have to have your Adolf Hitler so you can have your World War II. You have to have your Putin so we can have this conflict over there in the Ukraine. So it's controlled conflict. And so on one level it's very real, but on the highest level, there's this subtle manipulation to allow these bad boys to be coming into power to create these controlled conflicts. So when they want to take them out, they do. Look how easily they took out Gaddafi. And Gaddafi was pretty popular with the rank and file Libyans. People in America don't know the kind of things that Gaddafi did for his people. A woman was paid to have a child, and then when that child got of age to go to school, that child was paid a salary to go to school. He was trying to do things to actually help his people. He wasn't trying to, like some of these rulers, aggrandize himself and loot all of the wealth of the country. But he was actually giving some of the wealth from the oil money back to the people. For instance, he had a program where every family in Libya was given a blue Toyota pickup. I haven't seen the U.S. government giving everybody a pickup. That would be nice if they did. I could use a pickup truck. So Gaddafi was not hated by the rank and file Libyan. But look how easy it was for them to overthrow him when they decided to. So understand that at the highest level we're following these scripts. And of course, when the play is happening, when the script is happening, we have to have controlled conflict.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of the things you said about how the rank and file Libyans like Gaddafi, you could actually say the same about Saddam Hussein in Iraq, but that's a completely different subject. I want to get this caller in here. Area code 347. You are on the air. What's your name? Where are you from?
Hey, how you doing? This is Eddie Yanis. I'm in Brooklyn, New York City.
How you doing?
All right. Should I turn off my computer sound?
You probably should, so there's no echo. Yeah, turn your radio off there.
Yes. So I just wanted to ask a quick question to Fritz. I'm hearing a lot about the Imam Mahdi, which is the 12th Imam, and some people are saying that Barack Hussein Obama is either, according to like a Dr. Jim Garrow, former CIA operative, they're saying that he might actually be the Imam Mahdi, and I think Alex Jones made a passing reference to it on one of his shows. And it just seems to me that if he's not the Imam Mahdi, maybe he's like which would be like the Jesus Christ for the Muslims, is to unite all the Muslims. And if he's not the Imam Mahdi, maybe he's like the John the Baptist for the Muslims, which in other words, he's preparing the way for the Imam Mahdi. So I was wondering if Fritz Springmeier could speak on this subject, if he knows anything about this.
Well, I don't have anything that points to him being the Imam Mahdi. I can say this: all of the myths of the different religions. When I say myths, I'm using that I'm not trying to disparage anybody's religious viewpoints. I'm just using a worldly term. The end time beliefs that the Muslims have, that the Christians have, that the Jews have, and the Baha'is and many other religions. These are all well known in detail by the Illuminati, and they are being taken advantage of. And so, the belief that there's this Mahdi savior going to come, they're definitely going to try to take advantage of that for their own agenda. But I don't think that Obama is the Antichrist. I don't think he's in the Mahdi. I don't think he's going to be as prominent as some people are making him out to be. I think that he's just a puppet, and he follows when he's given an instruction. Why he's very quick at following through on what he's been told to do. But he's not a string puller. He's a puppet.
Oh, because I know that.
Just a quick thing there. In my interview with Alfred Weber in the final 10 minutes or so that we quickly did discuss Obama, he did say something about Obama is supposed to be made, and the Vatican would do this to fulfill Christian prophecy, make him the Obama, which is a subliminal term in some sense for some hot spot on a trinity of sorts, and I believe the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth, would be another part of that trinity, and I don't know who the other part would be, but I just wanted to throw that out quickly in my interview with Alfred Weber if you want to check that out. But caller, I can give you a couple more minutes. What did you want to ask?
Yeah, because I heard Dr. Jim Garrow also say that October 23rd is going to be supposedly like a new year for the Muslims, and they're saying that this specific time is when the Imam Mahdi is going to appear, or he's on the scene, but he's going to make his appearance. So I don't know if Fritz Springmeier can speak on that also.
Well, the thing of it is, there's a lot of muddying of the waters, and this is going to happen, and that's going to happen, and it doesn't, and I don't anticipate that that's what's going to happen. And you have a lot of different factions within Christendom, within Islam, that have different end-time scenarios. And so, you're always getting people saying, well, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. In this particular instance, no, I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks for your time.
Thanks very much, caller. Take care. Call in any time. Namaste.
Take care.
Later.
Bye.
Yeah, Fritz, you mentioned about factions. By the way, we got about 18 minutes or so left on the show. There are different factions within the Illuminati, many different factions, I should say, and there's so much infighting going on in the Illuminati, which shouldn't become as too much of an astonishment because they hate us, they're going to hate each other too. But one interesting fact that I've heard from some Illuminati researchers is that it is a misconception to think that the majority of Illuminati bloodlines actually want to exterminate at least 80% of us. It has been said by others, including Akashic Records reader Andrew Bartzis, who is probably my most frequently used source of info on this show because his Akashic skills can answer almost anything, and also George Kavaslis talked about this, that at least 50%, at least half of the Illuminati bloodlines would rather not depopulate the Earth. Instead, they would rather, if they had the chance to do this, microchip all of humanity to take away the free will of humanity, because that's the ultimate purpose of the microchip, to take away free will. It's like if there's anything we should say no to, it's the microchip, if we had one choice of one thing to say no to. But they want to change the free will of humanity for us to use our free will in malevolent ways, and they want to use humanity, after they microchip us, as a cosmic war machine as part of a plot to colonize space and further a galactic empire. Fritz, can you offer any evidence that that is true, that at least half the Illuminati bloodlines want to do that?
I'm going to challenge that and say that the top agenda for the Illuminati is population control, population reduction, and lower levels within the Illuminati may have other ideas, but all of the top hierarchy and my interaction with the hierarchy is they have been quite honest and forthright to me. They intend to carry out this genocide. They're not ashamed of it. They think that population reduction is a good thing for the planet. Actually, a large share of the of people in this country who are educated, college-educated people, have come to the same. It's not something I agree with, but you can go to a university library and see book after book by people that aren't even Illuminati that are calling for population reduction and population control. So, no, I would definitely say that all of the people that have any say within the Illuminati are definitely in favor of genocide and population reduction. They have downsized what percentage they want to kill of us. They're not quite as genocidal as they had been. I think that they're going to ease up on the percentages a little, but the genocide is still going to take place. And also, along with that, will be the chip. Already, my sources tell me that 27 million Americans already have the berry chip. And this happened because they had plenty of doctors that were willing to be dirty, and when people were getting surgeries and stuff, they injected the berry chips into patients without their knowledge. There's also, without those doctors doing it secretly, there were 232 doctors that publicly said that they would inject people with the berry chips. So, and then, of course, the military is injecting their personnel. That's standard operating procedure. Texas prisons, standard operating procedure for prisons is all their inmates get injected with the berry chip. So, we're dealing with millions of people already that have been injected with it. I don't trust what they're doing with the vaccines. The vaccines can be used as a way to give us some kind of nano-identifying chips. So definitely. And then, of course, working with people that have been in the mind control. One of the things in the 90s that I was having to deal with was this electronic harassment, where people were getting suits of chips put in them. They were and so what were these implants all about? I was puzzled to begin with. Why were they putting these implants in? And then the people that were receiving, like I had a couple of women that came from Texas, and they were trying to get help for the implants, and they would tell me what they were hearing sounds. The programmers through the implants would talk to them, and they would tell me what they were saying. And then one of the ladies, when she went back to Texas, was actually able to extract her implant that she had in her. But I used to ask myself, why would they play games with these people? Why would they torment them with this electronic harassment? And then it finally came to me, they're creating electronic prisons. Let's say you were somebody who's a dissenter, well, in USSR back in Stalin's day or Khrushchev's day, they would send you to the gulag, But when somebody who's a dissenter of the matrix gets sent to the gulag, it's pretty obvious to everybody else that you're in a matrix. But what a better way to deal with a dissenter than you just put them, you just give them, you just put these implants in them and harass the heck out of them, make them look crazy, and what they drive the person crazy and they make them look crazy, and then any dissenter is transformed into a whiny, crazy nutcase. It's a much better way of dealing with dissenters to the matrix than sending them to the gulag. So that's what we got going on.
Okay, and I guess we might as well close this show. I don't know how much time we'll have for other subjects, only about 12 minutes left. We might as well try to finish on this if possible. Some light at the end of a tunnel. A couple of things I want to bring up here. In my interview with Winston Shrout, he talked about how from insider sources he is getting information that Drake Kent Bailey and Benjamin Fulford actually deserved a lot more credit than people gave them. They all said Bailey and Fulford are both wannabe white horses who are trying to say the humanity is going to be saved by mass arrests that were supposed to happen. Well, actually, according to Winston Shrout, he is getting reports that mass arrests within the power structure are actually happening. And I know extraterrestrials is not your thing, but I do get emails from Sheldon Neidl, ET contactee. Once a week I read his weekly updates. He talked about how his ET contacts, and by the way, Drake Kent Bailey and Benjamin Fulford said there is extraterrestrial involvement with these mass arrests, that mass arrests are happening within the power structure, and Sheldon Neidl confirms that too. His contacts have told him that. And Alfred Weber has talked about how we're supposed to have a consciousness shift around 2017, and one reason we're having it is because he claims Fukushima is a global extinction event, and we need a consciousness shift to survive it, or a global mass extinction. Well, I hate to use the word ETs because I know it's not your thing, but hey, that's what they say. They're going to prepare us for a consciousness shift, and through that, up until that time, there are actually mass arrests going on in the power structure. So Drake and Billy and Fulford deserve more credit. Can you maybe confirm? Don't have to get into the consciousness shift stuff, but the stuff about mass arrests that are going on in the power structure. Do you know anything about that?
Well, there's some of it, and as far as Benjamin Fulford, I think his heart's in the right place. With anybody else out there, I always encourage people, to look at these people and evaluate them and evaluate their information and be responsible for what you do believe and what you don't believe. But, from what I've seen of Benjamin Fulford, he's trying to, I don't know if all of his information's on track, but I definitely think that he's trying to save the world in his own way. And we definitely have, I stay away from the ET in general. I mean, sometimes I address it. That's a whole big subject in itself, the ETs, and whether these ETs are here for us or against us. And what's their role in all of this. Definitely shifting then to something else that you mentioned right there about people taking a positive attitude. We're coming right down to the wire here on this, on a great show here. And thank you, Andrew, so much for just allowing me you just give me a topic and just let me run with it. I appreciate that. And I can see that sometimes I'm giving information that maybe is different than your understanding, but you've been patient to allow me to have my say. So thank you. I've been enjoying the show with you, and it's great that we finally got this time together. I just want to encourage people that, historically speaking, there's been plenty of instances in history where common people have been able to make a difference. I've been talking about Rosa Strasse protest, which took place in March of 1943. It started in February. The SS and the Gestapo were rounding up the last 10,000 Jews of Berlin, and about up to maybe 10,000 German housewives, women, started protesting outside of there was a building at Rosenstrasse 24, which is you can go there today, and they actually have a monument commemorating this protest. But these women were screaming. A large share of Berlin was hearing them, and they took the Nazi hierarchy totally by surprise. And what they ended up doing is they released 1,800 of these Jews that they had arrested, that they were going to send to Auschwitz. They even went and took and brought back some of the Jews that had been sent to Auschwitz, and they brought them back and released them. And some of these people actually survived the war. So the point is here was a protest that was spontaneous. It was done by women, and nobody was expecting it. And it came right at a really bad time for the Nazi hierarchy, because they had just gone through Stalingrad, and it was important for them to keep the morale of the German people up. And so instead of sending 1,000 German women to prison or shooting them, they just released all of these Jewish inmates that they were guarding, that they were going to ship. So, you can go through history, you can repeatedly see where one person or a small group of people have made a difference. And now with the internet, we're given so much power. Andrew, you're one person, but look, you've stepped up and you're doing this show, and through this show, you're reaching a lot of people with a lot of information. And so, I encourage people to embrace their inner brave heart, to not let your fears get the best of you, but to see that there's hope. There's hope, and it's not over until it's over. And we need to do what's right and stand up for what's right, and not worry about whether we're going to, in the end, win or lose. But the things that are on the survival of humanity as human beings is on the table, and so we shouldn't back off and just allow these elite to have their way without being challenged.
Well said, Fritz. And since we got about 4 minutes, 45 seconds approximately left, might as well close on one quick subject here. The whole idea, how can we solve this problem of like maybe a little infighting going on in the truth movements? I mean, one particular area that's a big pet peeve with me in this regard is the way that certain truth movements, and by the way, the 9/11 truth movement is probably the best example of this, will not let certain people talk about certain subjects because they fear that it will discredit the truth movement. One particular good example of this is the whole subject of how on 9/11 the scientific method shows the planes had to have been holograms and a direct energy weapon had to take down the Twin Towers, but 9/11 truthers to a great extent don't want to talk about this because they think it would discredit the 9/11 truth movement because, as they claim, the average human will not understand against something like holographic planes and direct energy weapons. And I mean, something that you've touched on in one of your interviews with Alex Jones. He asked you, what do you think about David Icke says about the reptilians? And you said, well, I don't really want to go there. But I will say, in your book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati, in one of the sources area, like a footnote or something, you did make reference to a satanic ritual where someone claimed that they saw Baphomet, and then that entity that was Baphomet then shapeshifted into a reptilian alien. And then at that point you said, if anybody wants to look at this reptilian subject further, read David Icke's book, The Biggest Secret. Well, some people would say, don't talk about that. You're going to discredit the truth movement. Well, what do you have to say, and you got about 3 minutes and 45 seconds on this, about people who feared not talking about certain things because they think it will discredit the truth movement?
Well, definitely some ways of speaking do discredit us. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that if you act crazy that people aren't going to think you're crazy. But I do believe in freedom of speech. I do believe that infighting is counterproductive. And long before I started exposing the world system, and I publicly started writing in 1990, I actually talked about the world system clear back, like I mentioned earlier, in the 70s, but I didn't start writing about it and publicly until 1990. But for a large share of my adult life, I have had as a principle, and I think everyone should adopt this, and that is, we should not stab other people in the back. We should not say anything behind somebody's back that we wouldn't say to their face. And all this infighting, what does it contribute to? You know, the elite can sit back and let the awake community destroy itself with infighting. So when you see somebody who's on our side, in our community, pointing the finger and saying, oh, he's a double agent, he's this or that, unless they're obviously working for the other side, you know, I would not go along with all of that. The infighting is not going to help us. And okay, let's take Alex Jones for example. Now, a lot of people come to me and say Alex Jones is this, and this. Well, here's my answer. If you don't want to listen to the man, don't listen to him. If you don't like Andrew Fisher, don't listen to him. You know, but you take what Alex Jones is doing, and if he's a double agent, he's doing more for our side than anybody else. And I'm not saying that because I'm trying to promote Alex Jones, but since I've gotten out of prison, about half of the people that I've met in the awake community, when I say, well, how did you get into this? They say, well, I got into it by Alex Jones. So if he's working for the other side, he's doing a lot more for our side than he is anybody else who's supposedly legitimate. You know what I mean? So whether he is or isn't, that's neither here nor there. The thing is we've got to get beyond ripping ourselves to shreds with all this infighting. And unless somebody's obviously a tool of the enemy, you know, leave the person alone. All this infighting and backstabbing is not going to do us, it doesn't do our side anything. It just makes us look silly.
It does indeed, and that's why I do address it on my show. Well, we've come to the end of this show, so now I'm going to tell you the thing. Breaks my heart to tell all my guests this, but I feel an obligation to tell all my guests this at the end of every show. Fritz, one of my goals with this show is to get as many different people on as possible before I give the same guest double dips. So even though I'm sure that I could do another entire show with you and come up with great questions and subjects to ask with you, I will say that because I am on a mission to get as many different people as possible, as I fear that is the best and fairest and ultimately the most informative way to do a show, I regret to say I probably will not be getting you on in the future because I'm on a mission to get lots of other fascinating individuals like you on this show. But hey, it was a pleasure to get you on, and I will make sure that this information gets out to the world for people to listen to it and learn something from it.
Well, thanks for having me on the show, Andrew. And I kind of do the same thing from my angle. I try to spread out, to a lot of different radio shows. And I appreciate your patience in getting me on. I'm glad we finally did a show together. and hope we get to see each other in person again.
I'll be at the Free Your Mind conference in Philly when it does show, if you're going to be there, so you'll see me there, if you are there.
Great.
All right. Take care, Fritz. Later.
Okay.
Later.
Thanks.
That was a great show, folks. I hope you learned something. Sorry if you considered some of it to be fear-mongering, but hey, that's what happens when you got to expose the truth. So next week I will have Connie Boucher on, not a household name, but some Blog Talk Radio host recommended her. So Connie Boucher on next Wednesday from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. So without further ado, namaste.